In our last discussion, we mentioned that in order to appreciate religion the right way and to discuss religion the right way, it has to be taken in its totality as a complete organism. Unfortunately, it's not possible to present it that way. It's not how human beings process information. We can only process one thing at a time. So I think that in order to find a starting point, I would like to discuss what I think religion is and how I'm going to approach this series of discussions about the concept of religion. When I say religion, what I mean is a rational path through life. Now, some people might say that's not the definition of the word religion. That might be true, but I don't want to argue the semantics of what the word religion means. Rather, just accept for the moment that, in fact, when I say I am living according to a series of philosophies and ideas, to me, those represent a rational path through life. And when I discuss and try and defend and debate these points, I'm always going through the viewpoint of this is a rational path through life. I want to delve into this a little bit because I think it's very important that we understand the distinction. The greatest achievement, or I should say the crowning glory, because I'm not sure that we achieved it, of a human being is reason. Reason is the majesty of man, the ability to think rational thoughts and to use those thought processes to determine how to act. Therefore, the greatest possible way to live one's life is to take all the information about life that a person would have available to them and use all that information to make the best possible judgment calls and best possible decisions. This is certainly not what many people think of when they think of religion. People generally, when they think of religion, I shouldn't say generally, but I think many people think that religion is really just a very large version of a cult. That's why I don't want to debate the semantics. And I don't care if you think that's what religion is or not. When I say religion, I'm telling you what I mean and what I'm going to be discussing. I'm discussing a rational path through life. So, if I was going to put it in context very briefly, what would I determine to be the differences between a religion and, or rather a rational path through life, and let's say a cult? So very, very quickly, I would just like to reference this little handy chart here that I have stuck to this blackboard with my child safety lock. You can see we have here, in a rational path through life, you will and should question your beliefs. In a cult, you are encouraged to not question your beliefs. In fact, very often it's a requirement. You should question your actions if you're taking a rational path through life. In a cult, you do not question your actions. In a rational path through life, you should be asking, why do we do certain things? That's not allowed in a cult. You are expected to do things without asking why you should do them. In a rational path through life, you should ask, how do we know if anything that we're believing in is true or real? In a cult, that's not allowed. You are expected to accept that it is true because you were told to by your superiors. That's not a rational path through life. In a rational path through life, you should be encouraged to ask, what are the real life practical benefits of this lifestyle? That's certainly not going to be allowed in a cult. In a cult, they don't care whether there are benefits or not. You must simply follow the rules. And finally, I'm sure there's many more points that could be made. This is just a very quick set of ideas. In a rational path through life, you should be allowed to say, are you, the authority figure who's telling me this, really qualified? Should I listen to you? Do I have to listen to you? What are your qualifications to be an authority in this religion or in this set of ideas? Whereas in a cult, of course, that wouldn't be tolerated at all. They would tell you that this person is an authority. And you would not be allowed to ask what his credentials are, or what his qualifications are, or whether or not you have the right to debate him in any ideas. I hope it becomes clear, then, that these are all ideas that I'm going to follow. I encourage you to ask questions about why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I should have the right to be speaking about these things, why you would want to follow these things, and what benefit will there be to you? So, to really focus in on the idea of rationality, I want to put something to you as an idea. To you, meaning the viewer. People say, oh, you believe in religious idea X or Y, that there's a God who created the universe or something or another. Well, can you prove it? Some people will say, well, can you convince me that it's true beyond a reasonable doubt? While those are very worthwhile standards, I want to point out that I don't think it's necessary to defend religion, or rather to defend the rational path through life, by adhering to that standard, because it's not a real standard that people adhere to in their normal lives. When you decide to go to college to get a master's degree, something that will usually impact you greatly for the rest of your life, do you make that decision knowing which college is the best one beyond a reasonable doubt? I doubt it. You've checked every single college and clarified every single possible question, circumstance that can happen, and you've determined beyond a reasonable doubt that the college that you picked is actually the very, very best possible one? No, I don't believe that. Most people do that. When you get married, for most people, that's a major life decision. Did you make sure beyond a reasonable doubt that the person that you're marrying is the best possible marriage partner for you? I find that hard to believe. There's billions of people in the world. You would have had to interview a great deal more people than you did for the position of spouse in order to make that determination. We don't really live according to the ideal, or even the idea, which I'm not even sure is an ideal, of knowing something is correct or proper beyond a reasonable doubt. That's not real life. What we really do is we take all of the available evidence that we have that it's practical for us to access. And then we say, based on everything I know right now, is this a rational decision for me to make? Based on everything I know about myself and about women in general, and about, or if you're a man, about, if you're a woman, about men in general, is this person that I am marrying the best marriage partner that I have that's practically available for me? Sure, I could travel to every exotic location in the world and see if there's someone better. That's not practical, and that's not how I'm going to live my life. Is it practical for me to make a rational judgment call and say, this decision makes sense? If it is, that's how a human being lives. That's how we make decisions. That's the standard by which I'm going to be discussing religion. Now, that's not to say, if I'm being honest, that I don't believe beyond a reasonable doubt in the truth of the ideas. But that's not what you should need to live your life according to these standards and be able to defend it. You don't have to be able to say to someone, I can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. That's not a real standard. I mean, it is, but it's not a real standard by which we make life choices. So the standard that I'm trying to adhere to and uphold is the standard of, does it make sense for you as a rational person to be living your life according to the religious ideals that I'm espousing? That's the standard that I'm adhering to. Before I end, I think that it is extremely worthwhile for us to just visit a couple, rather three, common myths that apply to people when discussing religion. And I think it's really important because it really will sort of set the stage for what I think of when I think of a discussion about the rationality of religion. Let's look over here at this delightful chart that I produced professionally with assistance. The fantasy of religion is that religion provides all the answers for everything. That's not true. I don't claim it's true. And anybody who claims it's true, I don't know. They're not the people that I would be having religious discussions with, to be honest. The reality is that religion provides enough answers about enough things to make rational conclusions about how you should behave. Practically speaking, many things won't be answered by religion. And that's just the truth. I don't have the answer to every mystery of the universe. And if I did, I wouldn't share it with you on these videos anyway. You're not ready for that. But really, I don't. Maybe. Number 2, in the fantasy of what people think about religion, truly religious people never suffer or are always happy. That's a common myth. You see religious people who aren't happy, you think to yourself, well, there goes that idea that religion is real. I mean, that guy's religious and life ain't working out so hot for him. That isn't true at all. It's really just a fantasy that somehow became promulgated by many people. The real truth is that the reality is religion provides a context for the suffering and joy that you will experience and other life events. So many major life decisions can be given meaning and can be rationalized as to why they're happening using religious ideals and concepts. But the idea that religion, belonging to some kind of religion, is somehow going to alleviate all of your suffering and ensure that you only experience happiness and joy, that's not a realistic idea. The practical reality is that sometimes we will not be able to grasp the meaning behind things. Even the most religious of us will often have, or rather experience, things in our life, and we will be left wondering why God did that, and we won't understand why this, that, or the other thing happened to us. We can't always figure it out, even though religion does provide a context for suffering, joy, and other life events. Sometimes we don't know what the context is, and so it's just not there. But that shouldn't bother us. And I want to move to number 3. The fantasy of religion is that religious people are unwilling to question their core religious beliefs. Again, I don't know what people mean when they say religious, but to me, religion is my rational path in life. A healthy human being should question their beliefs. That's the reality. You have a mind, and I believe that God gave you that mind and expects you to use it. And if you don't question your beliefs, I'm not sure what you're doing. The most important thing that you can do in life is determine how to live it. And if God wants you to use your reason, and you're not doing that, determining how to live your life according to rational principles, then I'm not sure why you think he gave you the faculty. So, yeah. The practical reality, and this is the most important one, is that not all questions will have satisfactory answers, even to the most ardent and adherent of religious practitioners. The balance of all the answers that you will receive and all of the things that you will learn should weigh towards rationality. This is critical, and it's the most important one, and I think it's a good place to end this conversation. Very often, something that I'll hear happen during religious conversations is somebody will ask somebody and say, how do you know X, Y, Z? Or could you explain why God would do this? Or how could such a thing happen? Etc., etc. Why do people believe in X, Y, Z? And very often in those discussions, you'll have somebody present a rational thought process. And then what happens is the person who is being spoken to will say, oh yeah, well, what about something else? And they'll bring up a completely different topic. So you'll be discussing why it's rational to believe in the afterlife. And then as you're giving what could be considered a rational answer, or at least something that, again, weighs towards the rational and isn't arbitrary, the person will say, oh yeah? Well, what about abortion? Well, what does that have to do with anything? That's a completely separate discussion. The implication is that, well, if you can't answer me about abortion, then the rational answer you just gave me about the other topic is compromised, and therefore your religion is a bunch of garbage, and I win the argument. What on earth does one thing have to do with the other? Every single topic needs to be discussed. That's certainly true. And guess what? Sometimes there might not be a good answer. Let's say that I could explain to you so many wonderful things. Why the universe was created, why God acts the way he does in certain circumstances, how to judge your fellow man, all kinds of different things. And then you throw abortion at me and I say, I don't really have a good answer for that one. Which is not true, but we're just not discussing that topic right now. But just for a second, let's play devil's advocate and say, you know what? You're right, I'm stumped. I don't understand abortion either. So what? Therefore, what? Therefore, every single thing that I've presented ever is invalid. And I'm just a cultist, a lunatic, following an arbitrary set of beliefs. After all, I can't explain one topic among the millions and millions of topics and decisions and realities that we'll encounter in the world. That's not true, and it's not real. The reality is, as I said, a rational path through life is one in where we take all of the available evidence and we see if it is rational to live our lives according to a set of ideas and philosophies. And if it is, then I feel like I've accomplished a lot. I hope you'll stick around for our future discussions.